be done, accounts are done, and more importantly is pending litigation and associated risks. I think that's a very important part that has been captured in this bill that will ensure that anything that is being transferred to these government-owned enterprises is known in terms of value, and any litigations or any possible laws that government may incur. And this will ensure that whoever is going to run these government-owned enterprises know the values of the assets they have and any litigations. A very important clause, Chair, I support. Thank you.
Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
Thank you very much.
There, pick one.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think even as we talk about valuation, valuation cannot just be the summation of the assets alone, Honorable Speaker, because whatever we are doing here is towards privatization. And towards privatization, one of the ways is through initial public offering. Honorable Speaker, if you are to look at the experience of what is already there currently, and I want to give an example of like two entities. One is an entity like KenGen, Honorable Speaker, where if you look at the assets of KenGen, the rightly valued is actually close to 500 billion shillings. But if you look at the valuation of the company itself in the market, it's less than 65 billion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, on the same, if you look at an asset, for example, like Kenya Re, which has already gone through the full, the whole road and is already listed, or the whole path. Honorable Speaker, the net assets of such a company, if you actually do the assets minus liabilities, the net asset is actually 51 billion shillings. But if you look at the valuation of the company in terms of the market capitalization, it is less than 17.5 billion as of today. Honorable Speaker, if you look the same and compare a company like Kenya Power, which has assets of over 350 billion Kenya shillings, but the valuation of the company as of today is below 25 billion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, that calls us to actually look at what do we call assets. For example, a company like Kenya Pipeline, what is an asset? An asset is the pipeline and the land above the pipeline. But what other use can you actually have in terms of that asset? If you are to strip that asset, what value can it be? If you are to strip the assets of KenGen, for example, if you are to decommission some of the sites, what actual value is there, Honorable Speaker? And I'm just trying to say that when we talk about valuation of this company, a summation of assets alone cannot account as the real value of that company, Honorable Speaker. But I want to support the fact that we need to keep on updating the valuations of this company in all perspectives, so that as we transition these companies, Honorable Speaker, we transition the real value, so that ultimately when they are out there for people to participate in terms of buying them, Honorable Speaker, there is the real value, but there is also the intrinsic value. But the real value, Honorable Speaker, is the revenue you get out of these assets, Honorable Speaker. The value I'm talking about, and I'm sorry to almost give a speech on this, the companies, for example, I've given, Honorable Speaker, when you look at the investors, investors are not interested in terms of what are the assets. Investors are more interested with how much value in terms of revenue do these assets derive. I submit, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, good contribution. Becoming also during the second reading, we are missing those contributions. Okay, let me hear the leader. When the leader raises his voice there, then he comes
Thank you,
first.
thank you,
Proceed,
Chair. It's good you have pointed out to my brother, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, that we're in third reading, or committee of the whole house, not in second reading. And it's important to hear some of these things during second reading. But, and also, to just point out, this is a government-owned enterprises bill, not the privatization one. The privatization one, we finished with it some time back. But Chair, as Chair Trade has said, the Vice Chair and de facto Chair Trade has said for purposes of business this afternoon, Honorable Marianne, that you know, many of the things that are said when you deal with government-owned enterprises are usually shrouded in mystery and a lot of suspicion and mistrust. And people imagine that if you're transitioning a state corporation that was registered through a legal notice into a limited liability company, that there's something you're hiding. And I think this particular amendment on Schedule 4, and actually the whole of Schedule 4, is coming or was designed to give guarantee or create trust with the public and even members of staff of these organizations. If you go through that schedule, it is even speaking to issues that touch on staff, those who are serving as directors, as chairmen of boards in those particular state corporations, that they will not be negatively affected by this transition to limited liability companies when and if this bill is approved. And therefore, this further buttresses the same, that any assets and liabilities, first they will be valued. And an auditor, either appointed by the Auditor General or the Auditor General herself, we audit these state corporations or state agencies, government-owned enterprises, to ensure that the values being transitioned into the company are as accurate as they could ever be. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, this is just to assuage those probably who view everything done with mistrust or with suspicion, that the openness that has been added by the Finance Committee, and I must congratulate the Finance Committee for adding this particular one, because Schedule 4 still assets and liabilities, that even if there are loans that have been guaranteed to these corporations, they must come out at the time you are transitioning. And I beg to support.
Very well. Two more interests there. Let's make them brief. Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I consider this amendment like informative and accurate, but I'm concerned about time frame. At what time would these audits and all these liabilities, including loans guarantee, be done? For purpose of accuracy, maybe it will be done and then the transition is happening next year. I thought time frame would have been considered.
Great. And then finally, Honorable Mwenje on this.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, mine is on the wording. Before, you know, the words here, before the transfer of any assets. I thought this issue of valuation, as the majority leader has rightly pointed out, I thought it would be conditional, that this transfer would be based on the report of the Auditor General, because here it seems it's as though that we are going to do the audit as is provided for, but you can still transfer. It doesn't provide for a conditional or a decision-making provision based on the information that the Auditor General will provide. I thought, but once we say before, then after we've done the audit and we find out maybe there are things there, including heavy liabilities, what then? That's what I feel is missing here.
No. Leader, let Honorable Mwenje be heard inside.
It says the auditor shall publish and publicize the audit and report. I thought this transfer will be subject, the proper wording should be subject to the report of the Auditor General.
Great.
The transfer would be subject to that.
Great.
But here we are saying before the transfer.
Okay.
Okay. I want to be informed. Let me
Thank you, Mwenje.
Right.
The Honorable Karoli Omondi. No. Karoli Omondi first.
No, Honorable Chair, I'm really debating how to contribute to this. But generally, when you are, because basically what we are trying to do is to commercialize the state corporations that are not incorporated under the Companies Act by establishing them now under the Companies Act. And the company's law, under company law, there are specific rules on how you manage transfer of assets and liabilities. And under statute, there's also very specific processes. I think I just wanted to highlight this so that Majority Leader could educate us, whether there will be a vesting order. There will be a vesting order, especially for those statutory bodies that have not operated under the Companies Act.
Great.
So that there'll be list of liabilities and assets that are being vested into the new company, because they'll be seen as two separate entities in law. So whether we will have a vesting order, which will be a gazette notice published for the members of the public and the rest of the country to scrutinize, but also to just educate us a bit how you will...
Very well, very
Yeah,
well.
thank you.
We have heard you. Jess Kambalu, before I come to leader.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Chair, looking at the fourth schedule, I must appreciate the Honorable Member for bringing the amendment. Honorable Chair, I support the transfer of assets and liabilities to the Auditor General, giving us a special report on the same or a full report. I want to cite an example of KPC, the Kenya pipeline. The people of Kibwezi, that is Kenya oil spillage. As much as we are talking about the transfers, we have refused that as we don't want to be sold. But you look at the people have not been compensated. So I wanted to look at the issues of the compensation, issues of pending bills, and many others.
You are a former very special person here. You are actually getting out of order. Leader?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
And I would want, before you go, members be coming during the second reading. Because I can see great contributions, but this should have come earlier. Proceed, leader.
But probably just to assuage this will be contingent liabilities that we're asking. If you, a careful reading of the proposed amendment says before. Before means prior or ahead of. And that's the first word in that clause. Before the transfer of any assets, liabilities, contracts, or transition of board members and staff. The other key word in legislation making is shall. That the Auditor General shall, compulsory, audit and report government to the government-owned enterprise on all those things listed. If you go to 11 subsection 2, the Auditor General, again, shall, compulsory. You remember that gentleman in BBI that said, shall, mandatory shall. So this is mandatory, shall. Publish, publicize, you publish, publicize, then report to the National Assembly. And I think all of us sitting in the National Assembly today should be assuaded that if not anybody else, those of us here on behalf of the people of Kenya, we shall be informed and we shall make decisions based on what is brought before the House. And that is why it's important for members to be in the House, so that we don't just speak on TV stations and out there. We come and speak here where it matters most. Thank you.
Chair.
Chair, maybe will allow me to refer the House to the just to conclude that bill which has been signed into act, the Privatization Act, that gave a roadmap of the process of privatization, that this House will have adequate moment to interrogate and be able to derive the right decision. But on this one, the essence of this is actually to curtail the transfer of hacking problems. Would have been, some of them could be coherent or inherent. So it is at this point that every issue shall be brought on book, so that the consumer, when the prospectus will be drawn out, the public will be informed about it. So it is in good faith that we don't transfer the challenges which were there before, so that the new management of the GOA, of the enterprise, shall begin from the clean onset and be able to run it upwards. Because the objective is to turn around. The objective is to restructure. The objective is to give a new life. Thank you.
Honourable Member.